Welcome to Round Hill Radio. Through our conversations, we discover the holy in the ordinary, look for moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we talk about. We talk about faith. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
Awesome. We are back in the studio, back in our home base, so that's fun. And it is week 2 already.
Amazing. I know. It's going to fly by.
It is going to fly by. I have to say how much I'm already enjoying this, because
Same.
this is
Same.
I was telling the choir, like, I might know some of the Bible by the time this is over, because we did 2 episodes on Genesis, 1 through 5, and then we did a live stream about it. So please join us on Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on Instagram for that. It was a good time. You can always catch it up after Reels, but catch it live and we can be in the conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I feel like I got, and then obviously on Sunday morning, so I'm getting like more in depth
Immersion.
Yeah, it's really fun. Really
I
enjoying
agree.
it.
I love it.
So week 2, diving in, we have some Isaiah, which is fun to it's sort of interesting trying to find some anthems and hymns, and it's a fun new challenge.
Some of these texts,
We'll appreciate someone coming up to me on Sunday and said, this is like a lectionary.
Our very own. Thank you.
In fact, we did. Yes, that's exactly what we did.
Well done.
So Isaiah 11, 1 through 9. This is the King James Version, a little KJV for y'all today. I don't think anyone said it like that before. I'm punchy today, guys. All right, here we go. So Isaiah 11, 1 through 9. And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord. And he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove. Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. And reprove with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and the little child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed, their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. And the suckling child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as waters cover the earth. And that's why I don't read in worship. Stumble.
You did fine.
But we get through it all together. So there we go. That's much longer.
There's a lot there.
And it's a lot happening.
There's a lot
happening. And things are smote.
Yes. Yeah, good Elizabethan language there.
Yeah.
Right? Well, where do we begin?
I was about to say, where do we begin?
So this is quite a change from last week's passage where we had Genesis. We had this beautiful unfolding of creation. Let there be light, all very kind of, it just unfolds in a beautiful way. I was thinking about it today, writing in my guidebook. Yeah. Just thinking that this is such a powerful creative experience. This is creative in a way, but a really different way.
Yeah.
You look doubtful.
I am.
Hang in there with me.
I will.
Here we go. So, first of all, this text is complicated by the fact that it comes from a biblical book called the Book of Isaiah.
Okay.
But it should really be called the Book of Isaiahs.
Oh.
Because there's more than one of them. Yeah. I mean,
of course there is.
It's the Bible we're working with here.
Yeah.
So it's not straightforward. There are several Isaiahs, and the texts of course, you can imagine how much devotion has been taken over the years to study these texts and to figure out that there were more than, that there was more than one of them.
Yeah.
In fact, several of them.
So does that mean there were more than one there was more than one person writing under the name of Isaiah, or there were a
Yes.
bunch of guys named Isaiah writing?
I think it's a little unclear.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure myself. I think the idea is that there are several Isaiahs who are writing over many years.
Okay.
Many, many years. So you have an Isaiah, and that's probably coming from the first part of the book, which is like chapters 1 to 39 in
Okay.
the book. So our passage falls there. And then you've got another Isaiah who's probably writing during the time of the exile.
Okay.
Then you've got another one who's writing after the exile. The Israelites have returned from their exile to which they were sent in 584. So you've got three completely different voices. And, if you love hope and joy and exuberance, definitely steer yourself in the direction of the second and third Isaiahs.
Got it.
This Isaiah can be a little harsh,
Yes.
putting it mildly. However, one of the reasons I chose this has to do with this strong emphasis on an imagined leader who's going to come forward and guide the people. And so it's basically a job description. That maybe sounds a little...
No, I like it. I hadn't thought. Yeah, that works. That works.
It is,
Yeah.
right? And so the job description is that there's going to come a day when there will be no more war. This is the person who's going to make it happen. So then the question is, well, what's the person's job description for that kind of position, right? To create that kind of world. And there are some beautiful passages in what we now call First Isaiah. All having to do with the overthrow, many of them having to do with the overthrow of violence. I'm just reading a book right now, which I would recommend highly. It's called How to Remain a Christian While Reading the Bible. And it's written by John Dominic Crossan. I'm getting the title a little wrong, but that's close enough. And essentially he says that there are two parallel tracks that run through the entire Bible.
Okay.
A violent God and a nonviolent God.
Yeah.
A plea towards violence and a plea towards mercy.
We were talking about that in last week's podcast.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And it's there through the whole time. So this passage would be in praise of the nonviolent God.
Okay.
The nonviolent God says that there's going to come out of this lineage, basically, a person, the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. So that's where this person's going to get the mandate, the energy. And this person's going to have all kinds of amazing gifts, wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge, and the fear of the Lord. And that word fear really can also be translated as awe.
Okay.
And so it's as if this person regards God in a way that this person doesn't regard anyone or anything else, with a special kind of reverence. So that's the background. And then we get all this famous language later, which we read at Christmas time, about the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the young lion and the fatling together. And this is the key, a little child shall lead them. So whoever this person is, I guess it's a young person, little person. So that's a little bit of the background. How you doing?
I'm good. It's good. There's a lot.
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think the mind goes to, the peaceable kingdom
Yep.
part of the wolf and the lamb and all that.
Yep.
And I think I'm actually drawn today to this, the Spirit of God shall rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, of counsel and might, knowledge and fear. I think is very interesting because it's sort of this idea this person is imbued with something, with a special understanding of the world, an understanding of, the wisdom and the knowledge and this sort of idea of it's, that's it. I hadn't really latched onto that yet. The first 4 times I read it.
It can take a while.
It can take a minute. Yeah. This one has levels.
It does have levels. And, the very last line is interesting where it says, they shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain. And a few chapters down the road from this passage, there's going to be this image of a mountain to which are streaming people from all over the world because God is going to create this feast.
Aha.
And it's of rich foods and wine. I believe that's the language that are used, right? So it's it's a calorie rich
I'm here for it.
meal. Just saying, it's going to be a really good,
It's like, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so everyone is going to stream to this because what's going to be overthrown is violence.
Right.
And one of the comments that Crossan makes in his book is that image is so powerful. But opposed to it, you have the book of Revelation in the New Testament, which is basically where the Christ figure is a violent figure.
Right.
And the world is overthrown more by violence.
Right.
So, he's saying we have to make a decision about how we're going to look through what lens are we going to look through to read this book.
Yeah. So you could almost be reading the Bible and get, you could get completely different answers and,
Totally.
results.
And it just doesn't fit into one category.
Right.
And because of passages like this, Crossan argues very forcefully, I would be in agreement with this, that ultimately it's the nonviolent God, right, that we're trying to elevate.
Sure.
And in a way, the inclusion of all of the other alternative images, it's a way of saying, you got to choose. People may want that alternative image of God. So this is what happens when that other image of God predominates. Right? There's violence, there's vengeance, there's retribution. So this is a totally different, picture of God.
Yeah. How do you hold on to that when it sometimes feels like the air quote society or world is sort of latched on to the other image?
Are you reading Crossan, by the way?
I maybe should.
You're going to love this because
Okay.
you are nailing it.
Okay, great.
So he says that the choice is between the nonviolent God, and he doesn't say the violent God, but what has become commonplace in civilization.
Sure.
So your comment, right?
Yeah.
How do you hold on to this when society may be promoting exactly the opposite?
Right.
So I think part of the way of doing that is to say, well, in these stories, which way seems to lead to life, right? Which way gives people an opportunity to flourish and thrive? Or which way leads to a vision of people actually coming together in solidarity to work and to live? And the Bible gives a lot of examples of that. But again, it's showing what civilization then does with that, which I would say ignores it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, it's like people have said to me, especially when I was starting out in the ministry, Ed, let's get real.
Yeah.
Or let me describe reality for you. Right? So civilization, what's commonplace in civilization, that's what people think of as being really real. Right? This is how people are, Ed. Don't give us this, exalted picture of everybody has the image of God. Here's how people work. Well, we have to make a decision, especially in our faith communities, if we're going to say, you know what, you're right. People are just constantly going to bend their way towards evil, violence, whatever. Or we can look at plenty of examples of people who've said, nope, I'm going to read Isaiah 11, 1 through 9, and I'm going to orient my life around that star.
It really does feel like a choice.
And it's one that never stops.
Yeah. Like a daily recommitment.
This is going to sound like a sharp veering off to the right, but hang in there with me.
It's for at least it's not me doing it for once. Yeah, go ahead.
I just happened to read, I think I actually mentioned it in one of our podcasts, just finished David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. And in that book, he has a chapter about a man named André Trocmé, I believe is his name. He was a pastor who lived in a rural part of France before the Second World War. And in this particular area, which had been renowned over the years for being a safe place for people on the run, Jews who were on the run from the Nazi-imposed government in France made their way to this little village. And they came in streams. It started as a trickle, and then it became a stream. And so Trocmé, who was the pastor, had to deal with the local Nazi official who came in and was always taking census. Like, this is weird. The local school used to have 30 students, and now they have 339.
Yeah.
So he wrote a statement, and he wrote this directly to the Nazi official, and he said, "I have to tell you that there may be some Jews among us." What a beautifully understated, right? And so, and in fact, they had all this secret language. When a Jewish family would arrive, the villagers would say, "I think another shipment of Bibles arrived last night."
Oh, yeah.
And so Trocmé felt like he was in a difficult position because he was very honest about the fact that Jews were coming in, but he never divulged exactly how many. And he had to tell a lot of other little white lies, right? So he basically made a decision that he was going to be as truthful as he could possibly be on the side of the nonviolent God. What was commonplace in civilization was something that he was trying to reject in every way possible. But it caused him a crisis of conscience, even though he was saving lives, when he had to tell these little white lies.
Oh, interesting.
And I think that's where we find ourselves often. It's not like it's always a clear-cut decision where I'm definitely doing this on behalf of people who need my help and support, therefore I'm following the nonviolent God. But I also have to live in the world.
Yeah.
And I think this is why this sort of gives special attention to the comment of Jesus when he says, "Be ye wise as serpents and innocent as doves." In other words, you're going to find your way. It's going to get messy.
Yeah.
And there's going to feel like times when you're betraying civil law, the laws of the land, actually in order to follow the nonviolent God.
Right.
Which is what people found during the civil rights movement in this country. They had to break laws. You can't eat at that table, at that diner. Oh,
Right.
sorry, I'm going to do that. I'm breaking the law
Because
the law is unjust.
Right.
So am I communicating the messiness of this?
No, yeah. I really appreciate that because I feel like when you read stories like this, it's, the right way is, the to be timely, the yellow brick road.
Yes. Right.
It's like here's the way of goodness and light, and it's shiny and sparkly.
You can't miss it.
And it's the easiest thing ever. And you do a little skip on the ding with your lion and your Tin Man, right? Versus it being messy and complicated, and you have to make decisions that are hard.
Well said.
I really appreciate that.
Yep.
It also makes me think from your really, really beautiful example to a really small micro example.
Go for it.
Which was, we had a moment with my toddler.
Talk about making decisions.
Yeah. Where she was playing with another toddler who's a little bit older than her.
All right.
And
how could that go wrong?
Already you're setting yourself up for failure. But she's in school a couple of days a week, in this air quote school. And, there's like the class toys. And everybody, from all I could tell, and obviously they don't take pictures of the meltdown, so I don't know for sure. But as far as I can tell, it seems like they get the, this is the class toys, and we all kind of play with them together, and everybody's fine. And you see pictures of them really playing together, which is so stinking cute.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. The toddler she was with, they were his toys.
Yep.
And he was not inclined to let her play /touch / basically look at any of them. So she would pick up something.
Oh boy.
He would, "No, my toy."
Civilization.
And take her hand.
And it's discontent.
And she would just look at me with the what is his problem?
I believe in the nonviolent God. What's happening?
Yeah, she's like, what is going on? But it created, obviously this is a common conflict in toddlerland. This is not unusual. But it created an interesting conversation in our house because it was to what degree do you say to her, it shouldn't be that way.
Right.
And every kid, including you, should be able to take turns or play with your toys or finding that sharing quality, right? Yes, your idea of just in this moment is right. Comma. However, not everyone is on board with that. And so finding ways to, I don't know, hold your center, be okay with, tolerate those who have not found that.
Yep.
And those who look at you potentially as if you're a little bit naive for thinking the world could look like that.
It's a great example.
I wanted to kind of use that to segue into this idea that sometimes when I'm like, oh, well, the world could be like that, I hear this voice in my head being like, that's really naive. That's not real, right? That's not possible in the like chaos monster of the universe.
Right.
So what do you think about that?
First of all, I love the story.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
And it's a perfect example of negotiating, right? The clash of worlds. Maybe it should be clash, maybe interaction, right?
I felt like a clash, so I think that's pretty accurate.
I'm sure it felt like a clash. And I would say one thing is that the church exists to hold up the impossible ideal.
Oh, I like that.
That's what the church exists to do. And we fail spectacularly at it.
Sure.
However, because we are also in need of our own upgrading, right? Somebody needs to forgive the poor church for having failed so remarkably well. Because on the other hand, there are times when we may not attain that impossible ideal, but we strive towards it. And it becomes an example of something that others can model. So that's what's always over the years kept me in the life of the church, because you see these moments and these opportunities when people strive towards this nonviolent God and the world that is occasionally described so beautifully in the Bible when that nonviolent God has God's way. And so that's what gives us the impetus to keep going back out and figuring out how do we deal with the other person's toys.
Yeah.
And I just as you were talking about, I thought, just think about all the examples of neighbors dealing with neighbors around all sorts of issues.
Sure.
Right? Navigating that.
Yeah.
But again, if somewhere right there in the back of our minds, not too far back, hopefully, is this vision of Isaiah 11, for example, right? You've got the wolf dwelling with the lamb. How does that work, right? But somehow it does. So I think that's my thought. That's why it's the church's mission is to hold that vision,
right,
and give people an opportunity to at least experiment with it.
Yeah. Well, and by the trying and failing, we are hopefully getting further than we would if we didn't try at all.
Agreed.
Right.
I believe so.
Like the getting close is still a lot better than the not striving.
Yes.
Or getting not even close some days.
Right. Well, and, I think that for some reason, as you were talking, the image of the cross kind of came to mind, because the cross represents, at one level, at least if you were looking at it from the perspective of the Roman occupying country, max fail.
Right.
Right. Little movement, a few people, not many. Jesus is popular, but he's basically exterminated by the Roman government through crucifixion.
Shut that down.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, along with Lord knows how many thousands of people before him. And so it looked like a complete fail. And then, surprisingly, it still pops up. And then before you know it, other people have taken on leadership roles who didn't seem, by the way, very particularly well trained for it. I'm just, they're us and we're them. So
yeah.
we can all look at this in humility. Right?
Absolutely.
And lo and behold, they become the next generation of leaders. And they also have this struggle. You can tell they have the same struggle. Is it the nonviolent God, or is it what civilization's telling me? And you can see how for some of those writers in the New Testament, civilization becomes more powerful. And before Christianity is not even a few decades old, you already have this stratification process happening in the church. Women can do this, can't do that. Can speak, can't speak. Where did that come from? It's so different from the message, from the sort of experience that we see of Jesus, right? So already you've got that other voice coming in. And so I think I guess in my heart of hearts, I'm glad that all those contradictory voices are there.
Okay.
Because I think they model who we are. We also have the contradictory voices. Right. We can be nonviolent when we want to be, and we can also be the opposite of that. So then I can say to myself, well, who do I resemble here? Do I resemble this spirit-led person that Isaiah describes, who actually, interestingly enough, is a child? Or do I resemble, this image out of the book of Revelation, where I've simply lost all ability to maintain any kind of civility, and I'm going to destroy, there's a destruction of the enemies.
Right.
Those voices are voices that we're hearing a lot on the global stage now, right? In terms of how we act or react to one another. I think the church, it's very important for the church to say, all that contradiction is there. We get it. We're human. But you know what? We've got a vision of what it looks like to be human when it's lined up with a spirit-led person. And we are not going to let go of that vision. No matter how many times the world says to us, Ed, get real.
Yeah.
Right? Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Don't be naive. Maybe we could all stand to be a little bit more naive and more hopeful and more optimistic. I don't know. Is that the word?
I think it comes back to that word hope, which you like. The hope, right? The thing with feathers, right? And
hope is the thing with feathers.
But it's tough. Hope is tough and resilient. And it's this, I think there is a distinction between an active hope and a passive hope. And passive hope is, I think things are going to turn out okay.
Yeah, the sit back.
Active hope says, how am I going to help things turn out okay? What is one action I can take? One thing that I can do that might seem so small and insignificant, but not in the way that God sees the world.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think there's a very important distinction to make in that, in thinking about, okay, what is within my power to control? What can I make better? Versus, can I picture all the ways it can go wrong and how can I prevent them?
Yep.
And I think there's a really important distinction there, because I think
it's great.
It's very tempting to get into the weeds of trying to think through everything that could go wrong versus orienting yourself towards what can go right.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it feels like that's what you're trying to do. But to me, that those feel opposite.
I agree.
To one another as approaches.
Yeah, it's starting off from that radical supposition, right? That let's see what happens if things are going to go well, right? Not anticipating. Yeah. And then let's operate from that basis going forward and see what's possible.
It makes me think when I was teaching, I taught private piano at a private school for a really long time. And one of my fellow teachers came to me because I was feeling a little nervous. It was like my first year. She comes up to me and she says, the kids might surprise you, but they're never going to disappoint you. When it comes to like game time.
Yep.
They might surprise you, but they're never going to disappoint you. And I was like, I think that every time there's like a situation with a child that needs to like step up and kind of do something brave, it might not be what you expect,
right?
But it's always going to be something great in its own way.
Yeah. For their individual journey.
Yep.
I love that.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. That there's, and to think there's courage and bravery in them. And again, that's what's so interesting about this, passage, that it's the child who's at the center of it. And Jesus, I don't know whether he picks this up deliberately because of this passage, but when the disciples are, grousing with each other about, hey, who's the greatest around here anyway?
Yeah.
We haven't talked about that for a while.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation about us. Hello. And so, Jesus says, so what are you talking about back there? And they're like, I don't know. Well, sort of, like this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who do you think's the greatest, huh? And he doesn't hesitate. He says the greatest among you will be the one who's the servant. But in another occasion, he actually brings a child into the center and says, unless you become as a child, you can't even enter the kingdom of God. So whatever that kingdom is, which is God's rule, not Roman rule, it's more like, it's got more people in leadership positions who are like this from Isaiah, right? This person who has the ability to create the space where those not normally inclined to hang out together, hang out together. There's something about the way the leader leads that makes opposites attract. And that's great leadership. Doesn't mean it's not forced agreement. That's not going to happen. But it's a world where these people are actually, interestingly enough, they eat together, according to the passage. It's like that's the common denominator.
Right.
They're not lined up politically, theologically, whatever,
Yeah.
but they can eat together. And they both, whatever, seem to be comfortable with the leader who's leading.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of people's Thanksgiving experiences.
There you go.
It's a good growth experience for everybody. Some opposites.
Something that's relatable.
Eating together.
Yeah.
Families are fun.
Yes, they are.
So I think that's really cool. Well, I'm excited. This is I
Yeah.
feel a lot better about this passage now. I was very confused.
Me too, actually.
A little confused, and I may have a better time choosing hymns now for Sunday. So thank you for that. My own personal
You are
planning
welcome.
session.
Thank you.
And we hope you will join us on Thursday at 10 a.m. on Instagram. Make sure you are following at Round Hill Radio. That's what you're streaming on, is that one. Don't look so surprised. And we thank you all so much for joining us. Round Hill Radio is brought to you by the friends and members of Round Hill Community Church. For more information, please visit roundhillradio.org.
If you enjoyed this podcast, there are a few things that you can do that would make a big difference to us. Like the video, subscribe if you aren't, and click the notification bell and select all. Thank you.